She kissed him before she could stop herself. Ten's lips were on Jiho's in one breathless second, not soft, not tender, but urgent and desperate, the kind of kiss that tasted like a decision you cannot take back. His hands, broad and ringed with silver, went still at his sides. The marble corridor of the Kwan Group headquarters fell silent except for the distant thrum of elevator machinery and the hammering of Ten's own heartbeat against her ribs. She pulled back first. Jiho Kwan, the most feared man in Seoul's underworld, the man whose name made politicians lower their voices and whose enemies had a habit of disappearing into the Han River, stared at her with something close to confusion. That alone was terrifying. Jiho Kwan was never confused. What, he said, the single word flat and cold as winter concrete, was that? Ten pressed her palm against his chest and pushed him, hard, 2 steps backward. The glass door of the private elevator slid open behind him. She shoved him inside. Stay there, she breathed. Don't come out. Don't ask questions. The doors closed on his face. Ten spun on her heel, walked 10 steps back toward the underground car park entrance, and then she stopped. She pressed her back against the cold wall and closed her eyes and counted to 3. In her mind she could still see it clearly, the black device wedged beneath the chassis of Jiho's armored Genesis, its tiny red light blinking steady and patient, the way a heart blinks before it stops. Someone had put a bomb in his car. And if she had not been assigned to that parking level tonight, if she had not gone down early to retrieve his forgotten phone, if her flashlight had not swept the undercarriage at exactly the right angle, he would have walked out that door, climbed inside, turned the key, and disappeared from the earth in a column of fire and glass. Ten was 24 years old. She was Nigerian-Korean. She had a degree in event logistics from Sogang University and a part-time job as a personal assistant at Kwan Group that she had taken because she needed rent money and because her mother back in Lagos kept calling to ask when she was coming home. She was not supposed to be here. She was not supposed to know what a detonator looked like. But her father had known. Her father had spent 18 years working security for men exactly like Jiho Kwan, and he had taught her what to look for because he said the world was not safe and knowledge was the only armor that couldn't be taken from you. Her father was dead now. But tonight, his knowledge had just saved a man's life. Ten pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking but her mind had gone very quiet, the way it always did in a crisis, a stillness her mother called her grandmother's spirit and that Ten called adrenaline management. She needed to call someone. The police, obviously. Except she knew enough about Jiho Kwan's world to understand that calling the police would start a war she had no power to finish. She needed to call the head of his security, Park Seo-jun, a stoic ex-military man with gray at his temples who looked at Ten every morning like she was a stray cat that kept showing up at the door. She dialed. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. No answer. She stared at the phone. Tried again. Nothing. A cold thread of dread began to pull itself through her chest. Park Seo-jun always answered. He answered at 2 in the morning, he answered during meals, he answered during what Ten could only assume was his one annual attempt at sleep. If he was not answering tonight, something was very wrong, and that wrongness had a shape she did not want to look at directly yet. She tried the second number. The deputy head of security, a younger man named Choi Min-jae who flirted with her over coffee every Thursday. No answer. She tried the building's internal security desk. The line rang out. Ten lowered the phone and stood very still in the corridor, listening. The building was quiet. Too quiet for a Thursday evening when the cleaning crews should be moving through the upper floors and the overnight security rotation should be changing shifts. She had worked here for 6 months. She knew the sounds of this building the way she knew the sounds of her own apartment, the groan of the ventilation system, the distant percussion of the freight elevator, the low murmur of the guard station radio. None of those sounds were present. Something had cleared this building. Something had planned this. Ten thought about Jiho in the elevator. She had told him to stay. She almost laughed at herself for believing he would. She ran. She hit the stairwell door at full speed, taking the stairs two at a time, her sneakers squeaking against the polished concrete, her breath loud in the enclosed space. Third floor. She burst through the door into the corridor and nearly collided with him, Ji-ho Kwon, standing in the hallway with his jacket gone and his sleeves rolled to the elbow and an expression on his face that she had never seen before and could not name. "I told you to stay," she gasped. "I don't follow instructions from my assistants," he said calmly. "There is a bomb in your car." The words landed in the space between them like a stone dropped into still water. She watched the ripples move across his face, not fear, never fear with him, but a rapid recalculation, the kind of cold assessment that separated men who survived from men who didn't. He grabbed her wrist. "Show me everything," he said. "From the beginning. Leave nothing out." And just like that, Ten's ordinary Thursday night became something she would spend the rest of her life trying to survive. If you're new here and already gripped, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing our community from across Africa, Korea, and everywhere in between. Now let's keep going. She told him everything in 3 minutes flat, standing in the third-floor corridor under the cold white glow of the emergency lighting. She told him about going down early for the phone, about the flashlight, about the device she recognized from her father's old training manuals, the kind designed to trigger on ignition, guaranteed detonation within half a second of engine start. Ji-ho listened without moving. He asked one question. "How many people know you found it?" "No one," Ten said. "I came straight to you." Something shifted in his face. Not warmth, Ji-ho Kwon did not do warmth, but something adjacent to it. Acknowledgement, maybe. The recognition that she had done the right thing in the right sequence under conditions that would have paralyzed most people. He nodded once, then turned away from her and pulled out his own phone, dialing with the methodical efficiency of a man who had navigated crises before and expected to navigate many more. The call connected on the first ring. Ten couldn't hear the voice on the other end, only Ji-ho's side of the exchange, which was brief and in a low register of Korean so formal it sounded almost military. He gave the parking level. He gave the vehicle plate number. He gave 2 more sets of instructions that Ten didn't fully follow, and then he ended the call and looked at her again. "My internal team has been compromised," he said. It was not a theory or a suspicion. He said it the way you say the weather. "How do you know?" Ten asked. "Because the bomb is in the building, my security chief isn't answering, and 3 of my cameras on sublevel 2 went dark 40 minutes ago. Someone turned them off from the inside." He paused. Someone who knew the access codes. Ten felt the air in the corridor change quality, the way it changes before a storm when the pressure drops and every living thing goes still. She had told herself, coming up those stairs, that finding the bomb was the hardest part. She understood now that it was only the first part. "Who did you call just now?" she asked carefully. "The only man I still trust," Ji-ho said. He didn't say who that was, and Ten understood instinctively that she was not meant to ask. She was already holding too much information. She could feel it like weight on her shoulders, the particular danger of knowing things that powerful men wanted buried. "You should go home," Ji-ho said. He was already moving, leading her toward the east stairwell. "Use the service exit on the 2nd floor. Do not use your usual route. Do not stop anywhere between here and your apartment. Do not tell anyone what you found tonight. And if someone follows me?" Ten said. He stopped. Turned. "You noticed the bomb in low light in an underground car park. I think you'll notice a tail." He studied her with those flat, unreadable eyes. "Will you be alright?" It was the strangest question he had ever asked her in 6 months of employment. He had never asked if she was alright. He had asked her to reschedule meetings, to translate a document from English to Yoruba for a business contact in Lagos, to source a specific brand of shea butter his late mother had apparently loved, practical, impersonal requests from a man who treated people like instruments in an orchestra. This was different. "I'll be fine," she said. She was not entirely sure that was true. She took the service exit. The night air hit her like cold water, sharp with the smell of rain and exhaust and the particular metallic bite of a Seoul spring evening. She walked quickly, head down, counting footsteps the way her father had taught her: count to 50, check your reflection in a window, count to 50 again. The street behind her was empty except for a couple sharing a convenience store umbrella and an old man walking a small dog that looked deeply unhappy about the drizzle. Ten got to her apartment, locked the door, sat on the edge of her bed, and shook for approximately 4 minutes before she stopped allowing herself to do that. Then she opened her laptop. She had a problem that could not wait until morning. She had touched Ji-ho Kwan's face, held his jaw in both hands during that kiss, which she had performed with no plan and no permission and only the desperate instinct that she needed him to stop walking toward that car, and now his security team, whoever was left of it, would have seen that on the corridor cameras. Which meant that by tomorrow morning, every person in Ji-ho's circle would know that his personal assistant had kissed him. In the world he occupied, that information was a weapon. She had handed it to whoever was watching. She was still staring at the ceiling and working through this problem when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without thinking, which she immediately regretted. "You were very brave tonight." The voice was female. Smooth and low, accented Korean with something underneath it she couldn't place. Most people would have run. Ten stood up. "Who is this?" "Someone who has been watching Ji-ho Kwan for a very long time. Someone who would like to speak with you." A pause. "Someone who knows your father's name." Ten stopped breathing. The caller let the silence stretch, let it do its work, because she clearly understood exactly what she had just said and what it cost to hear it. Then she spoke again. "My name is Nara. I'm in the cafe across from your building right now. Come down. I'll buy you tea. And I'll tell you who put that bomb in the car, and why your being alive tonight might have ruined everything they planned." The call ended. Ten looked at the locked door of her apartment. Then at the window. Then at her shoes by the door. She put her shoes on. Nara was not what Ten expected. She had imagined, in the 30 seconds between putting on her shoes and crossing the street, someone dangerous looking. A woman who carried herself like a weapon, all sharp edges and cold eyes. Instead, the woman sitting in the corner booth of the 24-hour cafe was small and still, wearing a plain gray coat, her black hair pulled back in a way that made her look almost academic. She had a cup of barley tea in front of her and a second one already waiting at Ten's side of the table. Ten sat down. "Your father," Nara said immediately, "worked for Lee Jong-yun for 11 years before he died." Ten felt the name land in her chest like a stone. Lee Jong-yun. A man she had grown up hearing about only in whispers, the ghost who occupied the space at the top of Seoul's criminal architecture, the man whom Ji-ho Kwan himself had allegedly displaced 5 years ago in a power shift so violent that it rewrote the hierarchy of 3 districts overnight. "My father worked private security," Ten said carefully. "For a lot of people. He worked for Lee specifically. He knew things. And when he died, those things were supposed to die with him." Nara wrapped both hands around her own cup. "They didn't. What does this have to do with tonight?" Nara looked at her with eyes that were ancient with tiredness. Ji-ho Kwan did not take Lee Jong-yun's territory through cleverness or force. He did it because someone gave him information, detailed, intimate, catastrophic information about Lee's operations, his finances, his people. A leak that gutted Lee's entire network in 72 hours. She paused. "Your father was that leak." The world did a slow, quiet rotation beneath Ten's feet. "That's not possible," she said. "I know it's hard to hear. But your father spent his last 6 months transferring files. He was building something, an exit. He was trying to get himself and you and your mother out safely before it all collapsed. He didn't make it in time." Nara's voice held no cruelty, Only the flat delivery of someone who had long ago exhausted their own grief about this particular story. Lee's people killed him. But they never found the files. They've been looking for 3 years. Ten stared at the tea in front of her. The steam rose and curled and disappeared. Why are you telling me this? Because Lee Jongyun's eldest son came back from Tokyo last month. He's been quiet, strategic, patient. And tonight's bomb was not an assassination attempt. It was a distraction. Nara leaned forward, and now the academic stillness dropped and something urgent replaced it. Ji-ho was supposed to die in that car. In the chaos of his death, Lee's son was going to move on Kwon Group's headquarters and retrieve a particular server room on the 14th floor. A room that contains, among other things, the full archive of files your father compiled. She held Ten's gaze. He failed tonight because you stopped it. And now he knows someone interfered. He will find out it was you. It's only a matter of time. Ten pressed her fingers flat against the table to stop them from trembling. So I'm in danger. Tremendous danger. Yes. And what do you want from me? Nara sat back. I want you to tell Ji-ho Kwon the truth. All of it. Your father, the files, Lee's son. He needs to know what's actually happening or he will respond the wrong way and start a war that will swallow everyone in it. Ji-ho will think I've been manipulating him. Working close to him deliberately. He'll think I knew about those files all along. Yes, Nara said simply. He probably will. Ten laughed, a short, involuntary sound with no humor in it. You're asking me to go to the most dangerous man in Seoul and give him every reason to believe I've been lying to him for 6 months, and you're doing this the same night I kissed him in front of security cameras. Nara blinked. The first genuine surprise Ten had seen on her face. You kissed him? To stop him from reaching the car. I didn't have a better idea. Ten rubbed her face with both hands. It was impulsive. Nara was quiet for a moment. Then, incredibly, the corner of her mouth moved. Well. That complicates things considerably. Ten was back in her apartment by 1 in the morning. She sat on the floor this time, back against the bed, phone in her lap, running every version of tomorrow she could imagine. There were not many good ones. She could run, get on a plane, go back to Lagos, leave this entire city and its beautiful deadly architecture of secrets. But if the files were here and Lee's son was hunting them and her father had died building them, running felt like betraying a man who had already paid the highest price possible to give her a future worth protecting. She could go to Ji-ho. She could tell him everything and trust that the look he'd given her tonight, that sliver of acknowledgement, almost warmth, meant something. That was the more dangerous option. Her phone buzzed. Ji-ho. An actual call, not a message. She answered. Are you safe? He said. Yes. She paused. Are you? My people are handling the device. A beat of silence. I owe you something. I don't say that to many people. Ten closed her eyes. In her mind she could see her father's face, laughing in the kitchen of their Abuja apartment, teaching her how to check a car, telling her that the bravest thing you can do in a dangerous world is tell the truth to the right person at the right moment. The right person. The right moment. Ji-ho, she said. I need to tell you something. About my father. About why I ended up working for you. About what's really in that server room on the 14th floor. Silence. Then, I'll send a car. Don't, she said quickly. Not one of your usual ones. And please, not through Park Seo-jun. Another silence, longer this time. She could almost hear him thinking, hear the architecture of his suspicion being constructed and examined. Then, quietly, how do you know about Seo-jun? Because, Ten said, her voice steady now, steadier than she felt, I think he's the one who turned off your cameras. Ji-ho came himself. No driver, no escort, just him, in a plain dark jacket, driving a car Ten had never seen before, pulling up to the side street she had named. She got in without speaking and they drove north for 20 minutes in complete silence until he pulled into the underground lot of a building she didn't recognize and led her up a stairwell to a room on the 5th floor that was clearly a secondary workspace, monitors, a secure phone line, a small table, and 2 chairs. He sat across from her and he said, "Talk." So she did. She told him about her father. About Lee Jong-un. About the files, and what they contained, and how long her father had spent building them, and what they had cost him. She told him about Nara in the cafe and what Nara had said about Lee's son and the server room and the real purpose of the bomb. She watched Ji-ho's face the entire time and she watched him go through it, the initial stillness, then a tightening around his eyes, then a long, controlled exhale that she understood was the only external sign he was going to allow himself. When she finished, the room was very quiet. "You've known about the server room," he said. "Since when?" "Since tonight." "I didn't know any of this before tonight." "That's what you're asking me to believe." "Yes." He stood up and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the city lights. Ten watched his reflection in the glass, the rigid line of his shoulders, the angle of his jaw. She had spent 6 months in proximity to this man and understood almost nothing about him. She understood him better in this room, in this hour, than she had in all those months combined, because she was watching him hold something that hurt him, and powerful men are never more human than when they are holding something that hurts. "Seo-jun," he said, "has worked for me for 9 years. I know. He was with me before any of this. Before the Kwon Group ever became what it is." "I know," Ten said again, and she kept her voice very gentle because she recognized that she was watching something break. "I'm sorry." Ji-ho turned from the window. "I need to verify what you've told me before I move on any of it. If you're right about Seo-jun, then I have 12 hours at most before he reports back to Lee's son that the operation failed and the next move begins. 12 hours to restructure my security, protect the 14th floor, and find out how deep this goes." He looked at her with an expression she had no word for in either of her languages. "And I need to decide what to do about you." Ten met his eyes. "I understand if you don't trust me." "I don't trust anyone," Ji-ho said. "It's not personal." "Then why did you come yourself tonight? You could have sent anyone." The silence stretched between them, and in it Ten heard 100 things he was not saying, all of them stacked in the space behind his composure. "Because," he finally said, "you pushed me into an elevator. And kissed me. And told me there was a bomb in my car. And all 3 of those things were correct." He paused. "In my world, that is an exceptional record." She almost smiled. He almost did too. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face changed, the almost warmth gone in an instant, replaced by something cold and very focused. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, and ended the call. "Seo-jun just tried to access the 14th floor server room remotely," he said. "Using an override code that only 3 people know." He was already moving, pulling his jacket, his hands steady with the absolute calm of someone who had trained themselves to function at maximum capacity in minimum time. "One of those 3 people is me. One was my father, who is dead. And one is Seo-jun. What do we do?" Ten said. He stopped. Turned. Looked at her with a directness that struck her like a physical thing. "There is no we. You did your part. You saved my life and you told me the truth. That is more than most people have done for me in a decade. Now I'm asking you, please, to let me handle what comes next." "The files," Ten said. "My father's files. They're in there too. I know. They're proof of what Lee did to him. They're the only thing I have left that he built." Ji-ho held her gaze. Something moved through him, not softness exactly, but a recognition of weight, one person identifying in another person the kind of grief that lives below the surface and shapes everything. He nodded once. "I'll protect them," he said. "I give you my word." She believed him. She did not entirely understand why, but she believed him the way you believe a man who drives himself across a city in the middle of the night because he wants to look you in the eyes when you tell him the truth. He left. The room was quiet. 40 minutes later, Ten's phone lit up with a single message from an unknown number. No text. Just a photograph, Park Seo-joon in handcuffs, and beside him a younger man she didn't recognize, lean and sharp-faced with Lee Jong-un's eyes, similarly restrained. The 14th floor server room visible in the background, intact, untouched. Below the photograph, Ji-ho had written 4 words, "Your father's work is safe." Ten sat with her phone in her lap for a long time. Outside, Seoul continued being Seoul, relentless and beautiful and indifferent, its lights reflected in the rain-wet streets, the Han River moving dark and slow in the distance. Somewhere in this city her father's name existed in a file that had outlasted his enemies and survived a bomb and traveled across a decade of silence to land, finally, in the hands of someone who could use it. She thought about the kiss. She thought about the elevator. She thought about the strange, specific bravery of her father teaching a girl in Abuja to check a car in the dark, never knowing which car, never knowing which night, but knowing, trusting, that the knowledge would matter someday. It mattered. Her phone buzzed again. Ji-ho. "I'll need a new head of security. You have 6 months of observations that are apparently more accurate than my intelligence reports. We should talk. Tomorrow. Properly." Ten stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "I want a raise first." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Done. She leaned her head back against the wall and let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the moment her flashlight swept the undercarriage of a car that should have killed a man she barely knew and somehow already couldn't imagine a city without. Her father had spent his life trying to get her out of danger. Instead he had walked her directly into the one place where she was exactly who she needed to be. She thought that might be the most him thing he had ever done. If this story held you all the way to the end, you are exactly who this channel is made for. Hit that like button, it helps more people in the Afro-Korean community find stories built for us. Subscribe if you haven't already, new stories drop every week. And tell us in the comments, did you trust Ji-ho from the beginning, or did he have to earn it? We'll see you in the next one.